Are you trying to decide between stevia or monk fruit? Then stay tuned, because in this video I am sharing everything you need to know about these sweeteners and revealing to you which is actually the best choice for you. Hey guys, welcome to Healthy Mom, Happy Family. I am registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator, Erin Palinski-Wade, and I am so happy to have you here joining me today because I am going to share everything you have ever wanted to know about the sugar substitutes stevia and monk fruit. And I'm doing this so that you can really decide which is the best low-calorie sweetener option for you when it comes to diabetes management or blood sugar control. Now, before we dive in, I just want to remind you that if you are looking for any tips or tricks in helping you to manage type 2 diabetes or simple recipes that are delicious too, I would love for you to take a minute and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss any new videos. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you what stevia and monk fruit actually are. I'm going to be showing you how each of these low-calorie sweeteners can actually be used, and then we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each. And finally, make sure to stay tuned to the very end because I am going to be revealing to you which between stevia and monk fruit is actually the better choice when it comes to not just satisfying your sweet tooth, but also managing blood sugar. Okay, so who's ready? I know I am, so let's get started. So let's first start by talking about what stevia actually is. So stevia is an herb and it's extracted from a plant. That's how we get the stevia sweetener. And the sweetener is actually 200 to 300 times sweeter than sugar. Now it is considered natural and it is considered sugar-free. But what's really kind of interesting is that pure stevia in its unrefined state is actually unsafe to consume. So what you find when you buy stevia in the store is actually the refined version, which has been considered safe for consumption. Now, when it comes to stevia, there actually does seem to be some benefits to consuming it. The first is actually the benefit that it can have on blood sugar. So with stevia, we know it contains no carbohydrates and no sugar, so it's not going to have any kind of direct impact on your blood sugar by itself. But there's also some research that suggests when you use stevia, it may actually help to lower your blood sugar levels, which is really exciting if you're thinking about using it as a sweetener to help manage diabetes. Now, there's also been some research to say it may help as an aid to weight management, and that's because the stevia extract, it's actually been shown to have that same level of satiety as sugar. So if you eat a food with actual sugar in it, or you eat something with stevia, you have the same feeling of fullness after, but of course when we're using stevia instead of added sugar, it significantly reduces the calories. Now, another benefit of stevia that I think is really interesting is that some research shows that when you use stevia, it can actually help to reduce both total cholesterol and the bad cholesterol, that LDL cholesterol level. Now, I think this is really exciting news, especially for people who have insulin resistance or have diabetes, because if you have diabetes, you have a significantly greater risk of heart disease, and you want to do everything you can to keep your total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol within an ideal range. So using stevia as a sweetener may potentially help with that, which can in turn help promote a healthy heart. Now, there's also some research that suggests that stevia might even have some anti-cancer benefits. There was a specific compound found in stevia that's been shown to be toxic to certain cancer cells. So what they found kind of in test tube studies and in labs is that this compound can kill cancer cells and prevent future cancer cell growth. Now, this needs to be studied a lot more before we can say there's actually this anti-cancer benefit to it, but I do think it's really interesting and something to know about stevia when you're considering what might be the best sweetener alternative for you. Okay, so I know I talked a lot about the benefits of stevia, but I do want you to know that there are just a couple of disadvantages too. So one of the things you want to think about is when you're buying stevia, if you are searching for different stevia products, you'll probably notice that many products that contain stevia are actually a blend of sweeteners. They're not stevia by itself. And you have to be really cautious because they're blending stevia. They might blend it with additional calorie-free or sugar-free alternatives, but sometimes they're even blended with dextrose, which impacts blood sugar. So you have to be really cautious. One thing to look at when you're choosing stevia blends is to see if it's blended with the sugar alcohol erythritol, because that's a really good choice since that one does not have an impact on blood sugar levels, and it also doesn't seem to have an impact on the GI tract like some sugar alcohols can. So the main thing to keep in mind here is read those labels, because you want to know, if you are choosing stevia, what those blends actually contain. Now, there's one other thing I think it's important to know about stevia. There has been some research to suggest that it can actually have an impact on our gut microbiome. So this means that consuming stevia might cause an increase or a reduction in certain strains of the bacteria in our gut. Now, that could be positive, that could be negative, depending on what bacteria it actually impacts. So a lot more research really needs to be done in this area before we can say if this is a negative or a positive or how it might impact you directly. But I do think it's important to understand that using a sugar substitute like stevia might impact the gut microbiome. So just be aware of that, and obviously more research will be coming out in regards to that so we can know exactly how it might impact us. Now, when you're thinking about stevia overall, the biggest downside I see with it, and I hear this from a lot of my clients, is that it does have a different taste, right? It doesn't taste exactly like sugar. It's extremely sweet, because I mentioned it's 200 to 300 times more sweet than actual sugar. And some people do feel like it has a bit of a bitter flavor. Some people compare it to tasting like licorice. So some people love stevia taste, and other people aren't as big of a fan. So when it comes to choosing the right sweetener for you, it's important not just to know how it's going to impact health and blood sugar, but also that you actually enjoy what you're using and you enjoy the taste of the food. And one other thing to know about stevia is the potential for allergic reactions. Now, that potential is very low, but when you think about stevia, it does come from a plant, and the plant it comes from is in the same family as things like daisies and ragweed and even sunflowers. So if you're allergic to daisies, ragweed, sunflower, talk to your doctor before you use stevia, because there is a potential that you could actually be allergic to stevia or have a reaction to it. So if those are anything that you have an allergy to, make sure before you use any product containing stevia, you make sure it's safe for you. So now let's talk about how to use stevia. So you'll see that stevia is used a lot of times to sweeten beverages. So you could use it in tea or coffee or even iced tea. You can also sprinkle stevia onto foods you might want to sweeten. So oatmeal, cereal, yogurts. Pretty much anywhere you would probably use sugar, you can use stevia as well. But you do have to keep in mind, especially when it comes to baking and recipes, that stevia is 200 to 300 times more sweet than sugar. So you can't just swap it out. You can't say instead of a tablespoon of sugar, I'm going to use a tablespoon of stevia, because it's going to taste not like you're expecting. It's going to be too sweet and maybe even bitter. So what you'll find a lot of times is that the equivalent is really 1 teaspoon of stevia is equivalent to the sweetness of 1 cup of sugar. But if you're making, say, cookies, you can't just cut out a cup of sugar and put 1 teaspoon in. It's not going to work as well in a recipe. You're going to have to adjust to different ingredients. So that's why you see a lot of times stevia is in these blends with other sweeteners, because then you can actually use it in baking, and you can use it in more of like a 1-to-1 ratio. But as I mentioned before, if you are using a blend, check to see what the stevia is blended with, because sometimes it is blended with other products or even sugar itself. So there could be a level of added sugar, there could be carbohydrates, and you really want to know what's in those blends to know how it's going to impact your blood sugar overall. Now, if you want to use stevia in a recipe, using a stevia and not a blend, it is going to take a little trial and error, because you're going to have to really work at the other ingredients, kind of changing them up to see how you're going to get the sweetness and make sure the recipe still has the moisture and the texture you're looking for. So you might want to look for recipes that use stevia that have already been tested and tried out. So things, and I'll post below, but my cinnamon roll recipe, my peanut butter cups, and even my brownie dough dip all use stevia as a sweetener, and I have tested those out. So if you want some recipes that use sweetener, you can click on those below too. Okay, so now let's talk about what monk fruit is. So monk fruit is this small green melon, and it's actually been consumed for centuries. So when we look at where monk fruit originated from, Buddhist monks were actually one of the first people to utilize monk fruit as a sweetener. So that's really, when you think about where it got its name, it got its name because the monks used to use it. Now with monk fruit, it's about 150 to 200 times sweeter than sugar. And when we think about the extract, the monk fruit extract, which is used as a sweetener, it is considered a natural sweetener. It contains 0 calories, it has no sugar, so it is a great alternative. And also, what's really interesting about it is because it comes from a fruit, it has antioxidant compounds in it, which may potentially offer additional health benefits. So one thing I think is really interesting about the sweetener, I know a lot of my clients are concerned about using sweeteners for children, and that's something about monk fruit that's really interesting, is that it's been deemed safe for pregnant women, for children, for really all populations, and it doesn't seem to cause any kind of digestive troubles. It does not raise blood sugar, so it is suitable for people with diabetes and seems to be suitable for people of all ages. All right, so when we think about the benefits of monk fruit, with monk fruit, it's actually not absorbed in our digestive system. So you're not going to get any calories from it. You are not going to get any sugar from it. So it's going to have pretty much 0 impact on your blood sugar. And, unless of course you're consuming it with other forms of carb, which then of course can impact your blood sugar. So I mentioned before, but monk fruit is considered all natural, it's considered safe, it's appropriate for people to use with diabetes, so you don't have to worry about consuming a food with a monk fruit sweetener and that your blood sugars are going to spike. It's going to pretty much be a neutral impact. Now, another thing that's really interesting about monk fruit is it's not just the benefit it can have on blood sugar, but it does seem to offer some other potential health benefits. Eating the fruit extract has actually been shown to not just lower blood sugar, but it seems to stimulate an insulin secretion effect. So it actually can help improve blood sugar management long term. Now, I know I mentioned that monk fruit contains a lot of antioxidants, and because of that, it does seem to have anti-inflammatory properties. So in research, it's actually been shown to reduce inflammation and reduce some oxidative stress, which means that it could be very beneficial when it comes to health. Now, there are some disadvantages of using monk fruit as well. So I want you to keep in mind that just because a food or a beverage product is made with monk fruit, keep in mind that that does not mean that there's not an additional source of carbohydrates or added sugar. So kind of like I talked about with stevia, a lot of times when you see monk fruit extract, it's a blend, and those blends are incorporating other forms of sweeteners. Sometimes they're incorporating even added sugars. So you always have to read the labels carefully so you can see if it's going to be beneficial to blood sugar or potentially damaging. Now, similar to stevia, it is possible to have an allergic reaction to monk fruit. Again, it's really rare, but it is something to think about if you do tend to have an allergy to some foods that are in the same family as monk fruit. So these are melons, cucumbers, pumpkin, and even squash. So if you are somebody who has an allergic reaction to those foods, it does increase your risk of potentially being allergic to monk fruit. So if you do have some food allergies before you start using monk fruit extract, I would highly recommend you discuss that with your doctor and make sure it's a safe alternative for you. All right, so let's talk about how you'd actually use monk fruit. So the monk fruit sweetener, you can pretty much use it in anything. You can use it in anything that you would normally put sugar in. So if you want to sweeten your beverages, if you want to sweeten a dessert, you can use monk fruit. You can use monk fruit extract on smoothies and oatmeal and cereal. So all of these are things you can do with monk fruit. Now, something I really like about monk fruit is that it is heat stable. So it means that it's pretty much well suited to use in baked goods. So if you want to use monk fruit in a cookie recipe or a dessert, you can do that. But remember, it is a lot sweeter than sugar, 150 to 200 times sweeter. So you're not going to be able to use it as a one-for-one swap. Just like stevia, you can't just take out the sugar and put in the same amount of monk fruit. It's not going to work, and it's not going to taste the way you want it to. So that is why you'll find that a lot of monk fruit extracts are blends, and they are incorporating other forms of sweeteners so that you can use that cup-for-cup substitution. But of course, you really have to double check those labels to make sure that you are not incorporating additional carbohydrates or added sugars, because then it's really not going to be as beneficial when we think about blood sugar management or health. Okay, so let's talk about that question that you are all looking for the answer to. Which sweetener is better? Should we go with monk fruit? Should we go with stevia? Well, here is what I think. Okay, monk fruit and stevia are both calorie-free, they're sugar-free, they're considered natural. I feel for most people in the population, they are a safe sugar substitute, and you can use them pretty much both in the same way. So you can use them in beverages, you can sprinkle them on foods to sweeten them, you can use them in baked goods. The nice thing about both of these is that they both do seem to have additional health benefits. So if you are trying to increase your antioxidant intake, if you're trying to improve your blood sugar regulation long term, both of these sweeteners do offer health benefits that can help you with that. So what it really boils down to at the end is that stevia and monk fruit are both terrific sugar alternatives, and they are both safe to use for people who have diabetes. But they both have slightly different tastes, and they have a little bit of an aftertaste. So what I would recommend is try them both out, see which one you prefer the taste of more. Some people love stevia and they don't mind that bit of an aftertaste. Other people find even a small amount doesn't taste as well to them, and they prefer monk fruit. So really between the two, I find they're safe, they're all natural, they are not going to impact your blood sugar, they have additional health benefits they may offer, so it really comes down to your preference in taste, as well as the ability to find them and even the cost. So that is really the main difference. Otherwise, I think both are terrific options, and I use them both myself. So let me know in the comments below, do you use monk fruit extract or stevia? And if you do, how do you like to use it? What foods are you sweetening with them? And do you have a preferred blend or brand that you buy? I would love to hear from you in the comments below. And if you liked today's video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss new tips, tricks, and recipes on managing life with diabetes. Thanks so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see you next time.